Good evening, campers, dreamers, and babysitters. A year after surviving a brutal attack, a social media influencer and her friends find themselves once again in the crosshairs of a dangerous and relentless dark web cult, thirsting for retribution and willing to stop at nothing to get it. Yes, folks, this is our raw reaction review for Followers. Another month, another screambox exclusive original. They always have a little something for us to check out month by month here. We do love the folks over at Screambox, and yes, they did send us a screener for Followers, which we gotta again say, like we do with most of these kind of off the beaten path Screambox releases, we didn't know much about going into it. I think I can say that for both of us. This was more just this is what they were offering, and we were real excited to check it out because, again, it gives us an opportunity to always see something different. And this is different, but I don't think it's very good. So, Luke, why don't you kick us off here with your first impressions here of Followers?
I don't even think it's all that different, to be honest. Looking at it when we had gotten the little blurb, it caught my interest just to see, what they could do with that as we're talking about a cult. I didn't watch any trailers or anything like that. I went into it expecting, probably a little bit lower budget, lower tier on that end. So I was not going to be upset about that. I was looking for some sort of interesting concept. When you kind of put this idea of a cult in there, we just... we watched Here for Blood, which was a pretty fun venture into this kind of supernatural cult. And I was like, well, maybe we'll get some more of the same. Unfortunately, that is not the case here. This is pretty mundane for me. It's something where when we were diving into the dangers of social media and just being a influencer in a sense, I think, it's a pretty basic story for me. So it didn't really wow me in terms of anything new and original being brought to the table. Just wasn't here.
Yeah, this movie was kind of a trip for me. I mean, honestly, I did a lot more of the legwork, I guess, off screen, and we'll discuss that here in a little bit. Compared to you, where you said you got the picture, you were out. I kept looking for answers, but as you kind of eloquently said before we hit record, there just aren't answers because this is such a weird film. Like in the sense of it starts off very mundane, like you said, very paint by numbers. It's a pretty easy setup. These girls go camping. This guy who's trying to hunt down the social media influencer that is one of the girls, and he starts kind of like playing it like Hostel, kind of torturing them and picking them up and putting them in front of cameras, for his audience of incels, I guess, is what we're supposed to get at. They wear wolf masks and all these things, and yeah, it's it just takes a left turn really quickly out of there. Like, because I won't lie, like the first couple of minutes, I was like, okay, this isn't the worst thing I've ever seen. I've definitely seen this before, but it's not offensive. It's not nearly like that uninteresting. But it's the direction. I felt so lost on why they were doing the things they were doing, and then I got further context after I finished the film. And I went and watched another film, and I didn't get any. It didn't fix anything for me. So this is a real, if I have to say it, a mess of a movie.
Yeah, it's honestly, I went through this film waiting for the hook, waiting for that kind of left turn that we were going to be expecting. And they do put I guess, a turn in here, but it's one I think you see coming from, the very introduction of, every instance that we have as soon as they're setting the table. You can really see it from a mile away just because it does play into those basic horror tropes. And I think, honestly, that's what this film is pretty guilty of. Not necessarily just horror tropes, but just tropes in general in terms of as we're getting into this social commentary of being influencers and things in just current modern times. I think it was something where the filmmakers, at least my take would be that they wanted to do some sort of social commentary on those dangers of social media and kind of maybe something that would resonate with an audience. And, maybe there is a script out there. Well, there's certainly got to be a script out there that, you can put some unique qualities into that, people are going to look at and say, this is rather interesting. Scream kind of has those tones of, being able to kind of pop culture-esque and things. So, this is certainly not that. This is something where I felt they were trying to accomplish something like that, but without any sort of creative hooks, any great dialogue. The dialogue in this is pretty terrible for me. It's, we mentioned veganism, we mentioned cryptocurrency. It's just one of those things where we're feeling so desperate to be modern, and it's something where a lot of the dialogue here, a lot of the characters are really eye rolly for me.
Yeah, it's buzzword central. I mean, they are really hitting you over the head hard with just everything that you could expect from kind of a modern social media toxicity standpoint, where it's just like, yeah, we're dealing with a group of cultists, I guess, as you would say. I mean, we call them incels because that's essentially what they are. They want to take revenge on this girl. I don't really know why, and that's one of the biggest points to me, where it's like I
I
can
think it's
only
just a
infer.
fixation.
It is, and that's that. It's so paper thin of like that's what we're supposed to assume, and it's like there's no real specific. It seems like, I don't need a slasher of all horror genre films to be all that in depth with why the killer is doing what it's doing. But when you integrate all of these like complex tropes of, they're broadcasting this, there's an audience, there's a group of people that are looking for this kind of content, or they want to see this person die, I need more. I need to know what the pure motivation of this is. And it's okay if you're trying to kind of string us along to, okay, we will get there eventually, especially if there's multiple films. But that is not what this was. And I don't think that's the intent at all, because, yeah, I've been hinting towards it. There's another film from 2022 that in our press release, in any of the marketing for this, any article that I've read, nobody mentions that there's another film called Follower, which is essentially I guess it just qualifies as a full length feature. It's 62 minutes, and it's the first 10 to 15 minutes of this movie stretched out a little bit, I guess. And I went back there looking for more answers to see if I could figure out what was going on. And it's legitimately, they just took scenes from that movie and put them on the front half of this and then continued it. And it just, I'm so caught up into this. Like, I've sunk now 2 hours, a little over 2 hours of my time into this, and I still don't understand the pure motivation of these villains. I don't understand necessarily why our main three leads here are friends. They don't seem like they like each other at all. They seem like they're on total opposite spectrums of every social, group standing. And it's just ultimately, there was nothing gained from watching both of these films as far as a story standpoint goes. It is really just, again, we're going to use buzzwords. We're going to use the social commentary of all this stuff that everybody's always talking about on TikTok and everything, and we're going to put a slasher film under it, and that's going to be it.
Yeah, and I'm going to throw out a couple big names here, so I don't want anyone to think I'm making any sort of comparison. But, I think the aspect here was more so John Carpenter's Halloween as opposed to something like Jordan Peele's Get Out or Us, where it's like we want this deeper social commentary meaning of, that oh my gosh moment, where we're kind of just leaning more so on the aspect of, hey, I just saw this influencer online, I became fixated, and now I am following them. And then I think the concept here was probably, there's more out there and there's a whole group of them, rather than kind of this deeper motivation, which, for me, those aspects can work if it's done with a competent script. Unfortunately, this one for me just did not hit. It is really, like you said, buzzword. It's just there's so many characters in here that fall into those basic tropes. No one that you really even resonate with, I don't think. There's long moments of silence in this film that for me, I was just like, I feel like maybe there should be either some sort of music, some sort of dialogue going on here, and just a lot of almost slow paced movement where there's, we're taking a lot of time to walk around and just do these basic movements. And I don't know if that was meant to pad the runtime. Maybe. I'm certainly, I feel that way, just because it was like you could have cut a lot out of this and probably had that original runtime of a 60-minute to 62-minute, because this thing just lingers for so long.
It really feels to me like, yes, that is why there were certain scenes, because I know what scenes you're talking about, especially once we get to this house that the whole like second and third act take place in. It really does feel like we're padding for time and waiting for the event to take place. And it's the same thing in the first film, where it's like there's moments of just straight, why are we just standing around doing this? Why are we kind of just padding for time here? And then it's like, okay, now we're going to get to it. And it for what they set up here, I think like the concept of having these kind of incel like influencer obsessed characters that for some reason want to go and murder a group of people or something. I know like one of the things that everybody was like these YouTuber houses or mansions that they had a few years ago. It's like, wouldn't it be crazy to set a horror movie in one of those? Like, that's all fine and dandy. I think that there is a story that you can tell there that would be interesting. This just was not it. It really seemed like they had the basic bare bones concept and they ran with it, and that was it. They didn't take the time to flesh anything more out of it. And I'm not saying, and I'm only saying that because I don't want people to get the impression here that I'm hating on this because it is about like the incel type people. That's a big buzzword for people on there. I'll use it on the thumbnail, but it's one of those things where it's like it's it, it's a concept that I do think could be scary and I do think could be used really well, but this just ain't it, kid. This is just very lazy and very just, again, bare bones, not enough information to even qualify for me to sit here and say I even understand where you were going with it, in my opinion.
Yeah, and like conceptually, like we said a couple times already, there's a story there, but this would be something as I'm sitting down at a computer desk and I'm typing this out and I have an idea of, okay, this is the basic concept here, but I need something more. I need to give the audience a little more to make it worth their time, especially when you're running into that, hour 15 mark, you're waiting for something to happen. And that's how I really did feel throughout the entire film. After that first opening, which is probably my only positive, is, they weren't pretentious enough or patting themselves on the back enough to say, okay, you've seen Follower. So, we don't have to touch on those events. Let's go completely into Followers. I did think it was well done that they prepped us for the events from Follower and then went into it. Now, was it something I was a fan of even in the opening? No. It was something where I almost looked at the shades of the Friday 13th remake, and I was like, oh, they're trying to do something like that. Not quality, but it was like, okay, I think then maybe that was an inspiration.
Like the mini movie within the movie.
And I was like, okay, at least they tried. But for me, even that portion did not hit.
And you know why I was right there with you, but you know why I have to backtrack on that? Because there is a reference made in the third act of Followers for something that you see in the first film, Follower. It's a moment, it's a sequence, it's a scene. They don't show it at the front end of this. She says it like we're supposed to know what happened, but if you haven't seen that first film, you don't know what happened. You don't. And I picked up on that as soon as I saw it in the first one. I was like, oh, that's what she meant. Well, why the hell didn't they at least put that scene in there? It could have been 2 seconds. It's like it just screams we don't have enough here. We didn't write enough here. We didn't do enough here. But we have another movie that we didn't really get too much action behind. Let's just tack on the end here. It almost feels like this is one whole script that got broken up into 2 movies. Honestly, like looking at it from that perspective, it's severely both parts for me. It's kind of fascinating, but it's very frustrating. It's very much just I don't like to sit here and just bash on films, but like this is one of those things where I feel like I want to just keep talking about it because I just want to know what the motivation was here. Like what were you trying to do? Because it all just felt so gimmicky. And honestly, the cheap shots are there. The fact that they call themselves the Wolves and that they have this credo that they kind of put over there and everything. All I kept thinking about was that the goofy "in a world full of sheep, I am the wolf" meme, if you've ever seen it, with the derpy looking wolf. I kept seeing that like every time they would say it, and that's a low blow that I could easily point to and make a ton of jokes about, but I'm not, because everything else around it was just so poorly executed.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what sums it up is Poor execution from
Mhm.
everything. I can't even sit here and say, some of the kills were great. They were very basic, very uh I don't know, not intimate at all. I don't feel, it was just kind of bland,
When
vanilla.
people would die, they would just die, and that would be it. It's
Yes.
especially egregious with the third act. There's some killing in there that it happens, and then it's like, that's it. That's all you're doing. That was the grand idea. It's frustrating, absolutely frustrating. It's I can't recommend it. This is, if you can't tell already, this is easily a slash it for me, guys. I can't sit here and confidently say that you need to sit down and watch Followers or Follower. I think that there might be some. Obviously, making movies is hard, and this team made some movies, so good for them. But I think they really need to sit down and flesh out these ideas a bit more before they start rolling the camera.
Yeah, I'm gonna second that as well. This is a slash it for me as well. This one was just real tough to get through, and seeing that runtime, we always talk about runtimes for being an hour 15. I was like, oh, this will be a breeze, but 15 minutes in, you're really feeling it. It's just not hitting. You're waiting for more things to happen that just don't ever come. It just isn't something that honestly, when I say I'm gonna file this one away and then come back to it later when we're talking about films that we've seen throughout the year, I don't know necessarily if I'm gonna remember this one by the end of 2024. It was just so bland for me. So, I can't say to dedicate your time to go ahead and watch this. It is going to be on Screambox, but there's a lot of other great stuff on Screambox. We just talked
Mhm.
about Here for Blood. So, if you're looking for a cult film, I think that one might work for you a little bit better than Followers does.
Absolutely. And obviously, as always, if you're interested in this, if this really seems like it's up your alley, give it a shot, support the filmmakers, support Screenbox. But if I'm gonna say anything, like if you take our opinion to heart at all and want to just know where to put your time or your money, I'm gonna say this is one that I wouldn't do that. I would definitely steer away from it. So sorry, but that's where I sit. Other than that, guys, we got a lot of great stuff up on the channel right now. We got some cool reviews for things like Frogman, which we just got to see. I also got to see, kind of on the other side of the political spectrum, a movie called T Blockers, which was a lot of fun. I feel like that would definitely be something that Screenbox could pick up and have a lot of fun with, just because of the concept there. It understands way more what it is, and it goes to it really well. But yeah, no, it's definitely an interesting stop here, but we got a lot of great stuff coming for the rest of March with a lot of great horror movie reviews. So stick with us right here as we got some fun stuff around the corner. So until next time, I'm Dylan Newell.
And I'm Luke Janesco.
And remember, stay scared.
Do the horror shit, gonna do it live. Cause Splattercast kick it every day they live. Splattercast,